All right, everybody, let's get started. We're going to do Lab 7 today, which is our first traverse lab. We've got 3 traverses we're going to do this semester. 2 in like Traverse 1, Traverse 2, and then our traverse exam. Okay, again, similar to how we did the leveling. 2 leveling labs and then a leveling exam. So the goal of this lab is to perform a 4-point traverse in Gullickson field. So if you go out to Gullickson field, you're going to see a series of nails grouped out in Gullickson field. So one advantage to the lab this week is I know you do have to carry the equipment a little bit across campus, but the setups are really close together. The traverse lab is not, you're not having to go as far on your setups as you would, let's say, for the leveling lab. A couple things. So you're going to start out your setup right here. These are turning point 1. There's 7 turning points for all of the groups in the class. Start your setup here. And then your setups will be done counterclockwise. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, when we do a traverse, we do it in a counterclockwise fashion. With this lab, we're going to use, again, control points as we did in our last lab to do the resection, but you are not going to need to do the resection by hand this time. You can sight the nails and then hit a button, and the total station will perform the resection, and it will set your azimuth. Okay? So what's going to happen is there's 4 control point nails set up. You choose any 3. It doesn't matter which 3 that you use. In the last lab, I told you had to use CP 10, 12, and 13 because I did some of the calculations for you. With this, you could choose any 3. It doesn't really matter. What will happen whenever you perform the resection is what the instrument will do is it will calculate its coordinates, but it will also calculate the azimuth to the last nail that you shot. So you will want to record that azimuth because that will establish orientation for the rest of the points in your traverse. Okay? Just to show everybody the pictures, I've got flags next to all these nails, so they're pretty easy to find. CP20 is in this concrete pad right here with the red pipe. CP21 is probably the one that may be a little bit hard to find, but there's a parking stripe right here, and it's in this concrete curb. And again, there's a flag next to it. Without the flag and without that marking, it might be a little difficult to find. CP22 is in this concrete pad right next to this central air unit, this HVAC unit right here on the ground. And CP23 is there on the bike platforms. There's a place to change your bike up right here, and there's the nail. A couple things. Whenever you're turning your angle for your traverse, TP1 is going to be slightly different once you perform the resection. But whenever you turn an angle for the actual traverse measurements, you're going to take a back sight. You're going to set the horizontal angle to 0, and then you are going to turn to the foresight. So for every turning point measurement, you should have 2 distance measurements, and you should have 1 angle. Okay, the angle should be inside between back sight and foresight. Make sure you set the horizontal angle to 0. It's a really easy step to forget. And what will happen is you'll turn the angle will be wrong, and then when you come in here to do your math, your angles are going to be off by like 50 degrees. Okay, and probably what happened is you didn't set the angle to 0 when you turned it, or when you turned the instrument. So make sure you set the angle to 0. When you record distances, the total station will record all of the distances. What you're going to do is only write down the horizontal distances in your logbook. Okay, those are the only ones you're going to need for the data for the lab. Let me show you how the traverse is going to work in my nice little pretty set of animations. You're going to set up on TP1 and you're going to do a resection, and then you're going to begin your traverse. So let me show you how this works. So here's the very first setup. So you're going to set up at turning point 1, and then you're going to perform a resection. So you're going to sight 3 points. You're going to input the coordinates of those points into the total station. It's going to hit go, and then it's going to do a resection. What it'll do is it will establish the coordinates of the total station and the orientation. Okay? So what you'll do after you do the resection, you'll sight your last nail again, write down that azimuth, write down that distance. Okay? Then what you're going to do is set the horizontal angle to 0, turn to turning point 4. Okay, so that's going to give you an exterior angle to right here, and then you're in traverse mode. Because what will happen is you will shoot that distance, So what will happen is once you get into traverse mode, you will shoot that distance, then you will turn an angle, shoot that distance. Okay, does that make sense? So for every normal setup in a traverse, you set up, you backside, turn, foresight. Okay? So whenever you finish turning point 1, here's what you should have. And the first setup is always a little different in the traverse because there's a little bit more. So whenever you do setup 1, you're going to have the height of the instrument and the height of the rod. You're going to have the height of the instrument, the height of the rod. After the resection is complete, you will know the X, Y, and Z coordinates of the total station. Write that down. You're going to have the azimuth from turning point 1 to the last nail. So that's why it says CPXX. I don't know which nail you're going to pick as last. You're going to turn an angle to turning point 4, and that data is what will help set up the orientation for the rest of the lap. Past that, you're just in traverse mode. Shoot turning point 4. Set the horizontal angle to 0, turn the angle, shoot turning point 2. So backside, turn an angle, foresight. After that, the pattern becomes pretty easy to follow. You don't need to do a resection anymore for anything else. So for example, once you move the instrument to turning point 2, you will backside, set the angle to 0, turn, foresight. Okay? So for remaining setups, all you're going to have is this. You're just going to have this table and then the height of the instrument and the height of the rod. You're not going to have all that other stuff, okay? Because all the other setups can be referenced to turning point 1, okay? And so for example, for turning point 3, again, turning point 3 setup, backside turning point 2, set the angle to 0, turn, foresight turning point 4. Then setup 4, backside turning point 3, turn, turning point 1. So every distance is measured twice. Okay, yes?
Is this different from last time?
Yes, because you're moving the instrument. Well, you're going to love next week. Because next week, not only are we doing this, but in order for everybody to get credit on the lab, everybody is going to set up the instrument once by themselves. Next week. Everybody.
What happens if you're not good at it?
We'll be fine.
Can I have assistance?
By themselves. By themselves.
You're not a student, so second.
When it's all said and done, here's what your field notes should look like. So you've got all of your seed data at the very beginning, your equipment used, group names, date, time, weather, all that, field sketch. Then you'll have your initial info for your first setup. And then you can see from then on, the setups are pretty straightforward. You have an HI and an HR for every setup. You have backside angle foresight, backside angle foresight, backside angle foresight. If you go into your handout, I've got a template for this, okay? The template also has you record the distance from the instrument to the last nail. It doesn't really affect your traverse calculations all that much, but you can record that as well if you like. Sound good? Any questions? Yes?
Could we use the same height of the rod for all of them?
That's a great question. The answer is yes, as long as you don't change it, you know? For the first setup, there is a chance you might need to have your rod a little high because to sight over cars. Like, I don't know what cars are going to be parked in front of the nail, so that first setup might need to be a little high. But yes, you can use the same HR for every setup, assuming you don't change the height of the rod.
Okay. Can we just get in and move the cars?
If it's your car. All right, everybody good? Let's do some surveying.
Shoot.